Okay, before we go any further, I want to show you one important thing that you should probably do at the very beginning before you put any files onto the tracks or anything like that. You're going to want to come up here to this visual area, and in the source viewer, you're going to want to right click just in this black area. Now when you do that, you're going to get this menu here, and you want to go down to project settings. What we're doing here is we're going to be setting the dimensions of your project. So depending on where you're how you're going to be presenting this file is going to determine what dimensions you use. So you've got here the width, you've got the height, and those are the main two things. You do have the frame rate here that I was talking to you about. I've got it here at the 30 frames per second. You do want to have this button clicked, auto normalize loudness. You're going to have different files from different students, and their microphone and recording equipment is going to be different, and so some may be louder than others. This will help to automatically normalize some of the sound. Now, ultimately, I still go in and make some changes to the audio to make it even more standardized. It's called audio compression here in Camtasia, but on this screen we'll be going into that later, but for now do have this clicked for auto normalize loudness. Okay, so back to the width and height. Depending on where you're presenting this is going to depend on what dimensions you use. If you're doing a standard presentation out on YouTube, which is what Cami and I do with our recitals, you're going to want to have these dimensions set for what is used in YouTube. So you'll want to find the one that you need. For YouTube, it's this FHD, it's 1920 by 1080. So that means that it's wider than it is high, because the width is the first number followed by the height. This is important because if you come down here, you've got this 9:16 ratio FHD rather than the 16:9. So you're going to have, it may look like it's the same ratios, but it's flipped. So now you've got a taller screen than you do wide, because now you've got the 1080 is the width and the 1920 is the height. So you'll want to make sure that the order of those numbers is right. So in this case, because we're going to be preparing this for YouTube, we're going to use this. Now, there are other options out there that you can use for various things. This 4:5 large, I believe this is what is used for like an Instagram post. And you can see that this is going to be more of that taller portrait style, which is used on Instagram because so many folks use their phones to record. So if you were putting something out on Instagram, you would want to record in this. So you just kind of will have to decide what medium you're using and what works for you or what you're trying to accomplish. But this could change. But today we're going to do it at 1920 by 1080. So I will click that. It automatically populates this. It has this lock here that you can lock so that if you change one, the other one changes proportionally, so it doesn't get out of proportion and warped. There shouldn't be any reason that you need to change this right now once it's set, but that's what that feature is, to lock in the ratios so that they change proportionally. Okay, when we hit apply, you will see now that this big black box is the actual dimensions that we want. So you can see here that our file is too small. It needs to fill up that whole area, or it's going to look just like this on YouTube. You're going to have a smaller framed video, and then you're going to have all this black space around it. And you can see it's not even really lined up, centered here or anything. So that's just not going to look good. So you want to go ahead with Camtasia. Different versions have different ways of doing this. Some it will help you center within the both horizontally and vertically. You have to make sure, if you go up here to view in the Camtasia menu and you drop down here, you'll want this enabled canvas snapping to be on, and you know it's on when there's a check mark. So right now it's not on. So we'll go ahead and click on that. Now as I move this around, it's going to give me some guides. If you can see right here, there's this yellow line that appears as I move that. You move that back, once it's at center, you get this kind of an X looking thing and the line goes away. So that's when you know that you're centered that way. Same if you go up or down, you've got this now a vertical yellow line instead of a horizontal one, and it will disappear once it's centered. Now again, once you take this up and fill out the whole screen, there shouldn't be a whole lot of need for centering. But if you happen to have, for example, someone that submits a recital in portrait mode, we have this happen even though we ask them to do it in a horizontal landscape mode. Some people will still do it, they just forget. And you can do it on your phone, you can do landscape on your phone, you just have to flip it. Some people just forget because they're so used to recording that way. In that case, you will get a file that's not going to fill up this whole area. It's going to be more like this in the middle, and you won't be able to have it fill the whole screen without cutting off the person's head or torso because of the proportions being different. In that case, then you would want to make sure it's centered. And yes, you will have some black space. You can go in and put another track below this track, put a background in, and that's something that we can go over later. But for now, just know that you can center that and then add a background if you need it. In this case, this person has done it correctly. They've done it in landscape mode. Now you see once I put it up in this corner, that tracking enabled, back here in view, the canvas snapping enabled, it will show you that when you've gotten right there on the corners, and that's where you want it. And then you'll take this bottom, you'll want to make sure you pull on a corner, not on the side, because pulling on the side may affect the ratio. So to be safe, always pull from a corner here, and we can pull that all the way over till it clicks in. We have a yellow square, and now we're good to go. So now that one's fixed. Now let's go back here. This first student, we've got to do the same thing. And this is why you should do this at the very beginning, because if you get a whole bunch of students on here and you forget to do it, and you've got a bunch of special effects and different title cards and that are all sized differently, it's just a lot of hassle and extra time and a pain to try to get those fixed. So that should be the first thing you do before you start laying tracks, is making sure your dimensions are correct here. Then once you have those dimensions correct, you can go up here to this drop down box and you can hit fit, and it will maximize the amount of the video that you can see in those dimensions. Now for some reason you need to make it smaller, then you can do that. Or if you need to make it bigger to look at some detail, you can do that. There are reasons or times when that's helpful in editing, but for our purposes today with some basic editing, we're not going to go into that.